Well, hello once again. And yes, you are listening to Unstoppable Mindset. I am your host, Michael Hinkson. And today we get to chat with Rashidah McCoy, who is a communications expert. She knows a lot about marketing and a variety of subjects, including one of the ones that we get to talk about often here on Unstoppable Mindset, diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI. And we will be talking more about that as we go forward, I am sure. But we'll worry about that as we go forward. But for right now, Rashidah, welcome to Unstoppable Mindset.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for having me, and I appreciate your viewers listening in.
And how are you surviving the day?
It's a good day so far. Sunny, not too gloomy out here in Maryland, so I'm not going to complain.
What's the temperature?
It's like the 40s, with a cool breeze. I'll take that over the snow from Pittsburg any day.
Wow. When I checked the temperature here in Victorville just a little while ago, it was 50, it was like 55. So that's actually not too bad. We are we're a little bit up in the mountains. So our temperatures are pretty close to what you usually experience, but we don't get the snow. We're in a valley and the water passes us by, which is okay.
I love it.
We'll cope. Well, listen, I'd love to start by you just kind of telling me a little bit about you growing up and what life was like and all those kinds of things. So if we could start with that, then we'll go from there.
Sure, Michael, no problem. So I'm born and raised in Pittsburg. I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, a Pirates fan, you name it, all things Pittsburgh. So I grew up in a single parent household. My mother was amazing, and my grandmother was even more of an amazing foundation for our family. And being in Pittsburgh it's kind of hard. I'm from the inner city from Pittsburgh, from the Hill District, where August Wilson was born and raised. And a lot of times, a lot of us aren't expected to make it out. And we don't make it out, unfortunately, just because of the hardship and the poverty and so forth. But it is a beautiful city. I had a great childhood. My mom worked 3 jobs to keep me in private Catholic school from kindergarten to 8th grade. I made some great friends. I was loved on, and I did my best always to strive for excellence because I knew education was my only way out. It was for me. I didn't play a sport. I was a little asthmatic girl, so I didn't play a sport, but I definitely was always involved in school. Because for me, first generation college student, that was important for me to go to school, to make a difference and to show my family, not only my little brothers and sisters, but also my cousins and my mom, that, all this effort that you put forth in life, there's more to it. There's also more outside of Pittsburgh. So being able to do that has been great. And I left Pittsburgh for high school, and I went to Delaware State University. And after that, I kind of went on to West Virginia University, got to travel the world. So now I'm almost 32, and it all feels good. And even some of the troubles and hardships make it a lot brighter today.
Do you think that the troubles and hardships and all those challenges helped you as you were growing up, or now that you're older that benefited you?
Oh, most definitely. I have a greater understanding and empathy for individuals than I would have in any sense of life if I would not have gone through some things. Just some things that people think are minor aspects from disabilities. As a young girl who had eczema, sometimes there was a point in my life where I was out of school for 2 weeks because I was hospitalized for severe eczema. And my skin broke out so bad I couldn't walk. Having asthma, had severe asthma and severe allergies. Those types of just hardships, understanding who I was and loving on myself. I know we are in an age right now where self-care and self-love is big. I did not grow up with a lot of that because I looked different. I was an itchy girl. I didn't have the longest hair, and I didn't come from, the greatest background where I had Jordans, and, my mom and I shopped at the thrift stores on Sundays, and I took pride in that. But as I got older, I realized that those hard moments made me more empathetic and made me love on people more and want to serve others and help them get through those moments.
So did you outgrow the eczema and asthma and so on, or do they still somewhat be with you?
They're still with me. But at this age, I've learned to not only maintain them, but embrace them. I get allergy shots about once a month now. I was on a maintenance. And for me, I embrace it. I am someone who I used to not even wear shorts or skirts. I used to wear jeans and tennis shoes all the time. Now it's like, listen, this is who I am. This is how I look. This is how I feel. I'm going to embrace this Black excellence that's pouring from the inside out. And I raise my head a lot higher now because I love who I am. I am a new mommy. So that's another stage of loving who I am. You know, my body's changed, my mind changed, my outlook on life has changed. But what it has done for me is put me in a perspective of like, listen, love on yourself and love on others who around you are going through some of the same things. You may not even know it every day.
So do you consider eczema actually a disability? Is it classified as a disability or anything like that? Or do you know?
No, it's a skin condition. It's a skin condition. And for mine, it's I have osteocytosis. So it's a condition where I lack the molecule of moisture that's held in my skin. So it's not a disability, but for me, it has disabled me.
Sure. No, I understand that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it under the like Americans with Disabilities Act, it isn't considered a disability as such.
No, but asthma is.
Asthma is yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, you could always just hold your breath longer, I suppose.
Hey, breath in my nose and my mouth.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's going to happen, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So you got your bachelor's from Delaware?
Yeah, Delaware State University.
Delaware State.
Mm-hmm.
And then you went on to West Virginia to get your master's. And what were those degrees in?
Sure. My degree from Delaware State University was in mass communications, and my degree from West Virginia University was in journalism with a concentration on international public relations. And my research, it focused on the mentorship and the importance of mentoring young minorities, specifically millennial minorities, as we enter the communications and marketing space and making space for young millennials, Black, Brown, and Indigenous.
So what is fascinating to me about that is that communications in some ways has, in some ways hasn't changed over the years. That is, we still talk to each other. Oh, yeah. Sometimes we talk to each other, yes. And sometimes we don't. But the methodology or the ways that we have available to us to communicate certainly has changed a great deal. So, what do you think about now? We have social media. Now we have such ease of access to electronic communications and so on. Is that a plus? Is that a minus? Or how would you really
it's an in-between.
Discuss that?
I think it's an in-between, honestly, Michael. I think that the spaces that we have allotted us the opportunity to communicate with each other in different forms and fashions. For not only individuals who are in different states and countries on the internet, you can now get your Google in a different language, or you can translate your documents and communicate with people easier from an app on your phone, or even speaking into your phone, you can have it translated. Social media has put us in a space where you can look at and talk to your favorite celebrities all the time, or keep up with family members who you haven't talked to in years or may not talk to every day. But it has put a pressure on young individuals like myself and my age and the current generation. It's put a pressure on them to live up to what they see and hear in and on social media. You're able to see the BBLs happening. You're able to see the money flow in, what looks like easy work. You're also allotted space to see the news in real time. Unfortunately, we have we have police cams on their chest now. Those videos are automatically uploaded, or we can record it on our phone and it's seen, or you can go live. Those are moments, yes, that are positive for us to be able to fight racial injustices, but also those are traumatic for individuals who are Black and Brown to see those types of injustices happen in the streets in front of you as you try to live a quote, whatever normal life looks like for us now. We see it, we hear it, we're around it, but how we consume it oftentimes can embody us as human beings. Well,
and whether it's Black, Brown, Indigenous, or white for that matter, how are we doing, or what can we do better? Maybe that's a loaded question, but concerning the whole issue of absorbing and really dealing with the incredible amount of information that we get today. And what I keep thinking of is, well, you just mentioned the news. We get so many videos that we get to look at.
Yeah.
We hear so many people talking about different things on the news, or we have so many other ways of getting information like social media and so on. How do we deal with that? And how do we start to learn to put all of that in perspective as opposed to just reacting? Yeah. I mean, it's
definitely loaded. I'll do my best to answer that one. Yeah. Honestly, I think having a balance to the best of your ability. I know we, again, mentioned the self-care. Self-care comes in different forms and fashions. It comes in a bubble bath, it comes in chocolate, but it also comes in sometimes not opening the Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok app for a week to just breathe. You know, it's harder, it's easier said than done because it's not just the social media. It's, it's the TV. It's a lot at us. We're still getting newspapers, we're still getting magazines, we're still gossiping, we're still talk. I think taking that time for yourself to also figure out which information is best for you in your life. How do you divulge this information and you share it? But how do you also take it in order for it to be reshared? Are you taking that in the morning, noon, and night? Because it will keep you up at night. Statistics say that if you're looking at social media between 9 and 12, you're liable to stay up a little bit longer at night. I think it's taking that time to figure out how to separate it. What does that mean for you? For me personally, that means that I try to log off at least by 9 o'clock at night, and that's still late, and just be done with it. For me, I used to, when I was in agency life, in a larger agency and a smaller agency, we had TVs mounted to the walls where all day CNN, Fox News, ABC, NBC was running. And it was like an overload of information just coming in from around the world, from different places at different times, with different information and different topics. And it was information overload. So for me now, being a nonprofit, we're actually going back into the office in 2 weeks. I actually asked that question. I was like, are there TVs in the office? Do we have to listen to the news all day? Are there certain times we can listen to it during key moments, 6 a.m., 3 a.m., and 6 p.m.? What does that look like for us? 5 o'clock news. Because you have to watch what you take in, because then oftentimes you project that out and that becomes a part of you.
How do we teach people to do that? I mean, I agree with what you're saying. And so in a sense, I didn't mean to say it was a loaded question to try to obviously trap you in something, but how do we teach people what you just said? Because it's so very true. And the other part about it is you talked about young people. I'd love to hear your thoughts on older generations and so on and dealing with it. But how do we teach people to back off? Because so many people have just learned to let all of that overwhelm them, and they get overwhelmed and they react very negatively to it. How do we fix some of that?
I think that starts with teaching people how to balance it. I think that starts in the space of understanding yourself and what you're consuming and why. I think when we think about that, go back to the old school moment where you're just jotting down what you're looking at and what you're consuming. How is this information positively impacting my life? Do I need to be on social media for 5 hours a day? What does that mean for me? Setting back and thinking about, taking the moments to block off some time during the day for you to have your scrolling moments. Same way you do for your emails at work. You may set times on your calendar to particularly look at emails in the morning and in the afternoon, so you can get work done in the middle of the day. Another example, I think, also is taking the time during certain times of the year to reflect also on the things that are on your phone, all the apps. We can have the phones and there's like 1,000 apps on them. Take a moment and look and see and reflect like, hey, do I really need TikTok, social media, CNN, naming all the apps running down, even the games, what is there for me that is important for me? And I know it sounds selfish to think about just, consuming that for yourself, but sometimes you have to be selfish in these moments for your own self-care and self-growth, because we tend to, what you take in is what you put out. How do you speak to yourself is also how you grow within your space. Those positive affirmations, those positive moments, you're consuming positive content and important content, then you're oftentimes going to kind of reflect that same thing. But sometimes when your content isn't as positive or is a little bit harder on whoever you are or what you're doing, it makes you more critical of yourself. So just taking those moments, I think those are a couple of tips and tricks people can use.
I think you're absolutely right. The fact is, we don't tend to take time for ourselves. We don't reflect at the end of the day, what went on today? How was it? What could I have done that I could do better? Or even the good stuff. What can I learn from that? We never seem to want to do that. And we just keep going on and on and on. But the reality is, if we don't stop to take time to reflect and to process and analyze and then decide what works, we're just going to continue down this rabbit hole, which is so scary.
Very true. Yes, terrifying. It's terrifying.
It is. What about older people? I mean, I know that there are more and more people who are getting more accustomed to using computers, although there are a bunch of people who say, I'm not going to learn all that newfangled technology and all that. But the reality is some of them do. And the reality is, but the other reality is it is here whether we like it or not.
Yes. And you have to adjust to it. I have a friend who actually has a business, and what he does is he teaches older individuals how to use technology. He actually does it. He goes to a library around different parts of his state, and he sets up days out of the month where older individuals, 40 plus, can come on in, and he shows you how to set your apps up on your phone, shows you how to use the voice notes on your phone, shows you how to use simple things that we think are simple, but are often hard. How to use Google Maps, how to go into your computer and use a Word document and to type something out and use the spell check to assist you in your spelling. Or even if you're someone who is disabled, how to use the read on your Word document, how to set that up on your phone to translate if you may speak a different language. I think that's something that's definitely needs to be considered, because technology is not going anywhere. And COVID has heightened it for us, has heightened not only our understanding of the lack thereof of resources to distribute to our individuals during a time of technological challenge, but in the same space, it's like, how do we ensure that everyone knows or has access? But I know I see a lot of people who are like my friend doing some of the work in the communities to do that.
I think some people may think me crazy for saying this, but I will anyway. The reality is that we're doing the same things we did 30, 40, 50, and 60 years ago, just using different tools. We used to write things, as you said, down on paper. When we were students, we would turn things in. We didn't have computers to help with a lot of stuff. But the reality is that what we're doing is the same stuff. We're just doing it with more and more efficient information dissemination tools. And it's also allowed us to spread the word to a whole lot more people, which can be a plus and which can be a minus. But the reality is communications is still communications. And the basic process hasn't changed.
Not at all. Not at all. It has not. I think we've lost the art of just conversations like this, getting on the phone and talking to a friend rather than shooting a text and saying GM. I seen a social media post yesterday said, it literally said someone texted him and said, GM, have a good day. And they said, well, General Motors to you too. Like, take the time to pick the phone up and say, hey, good morning. How are you? Have a great day. Miss you, love you. Okay, bye. Take moments to have that human connection with people. I think we kind of have lost the art of that. And I am that person who makes my friends, it sounds weird, but makes my friends before we hang up the phone say, hey, love you. Because you don't know what's going to happen next. Tomorrow is not promised. So taking that moment to embrace that old school, quote, quote, community and old school communications, it means a lot. Go visit your friend. If they live down the street, don't just text them and say, hey, checking on you. Go, text them and set up a time to actually meet and have lunch and have dinner. And as my grandmother would say, my mom used to say, lay eyes on them. Make sure they're well. Are you well? You don't know what someone's really going through. And I think sometimes we indulge ourselves in so much, from media to social media to whatever's around us and happening to us. We forget to check on people and who that human is and what they're going through, because everyone is going through something, whether we know it or not.
Yeah, the reality is, again, communication is still the same. It's just that we are forgetting part of that. And you're absolutely right. The fact is that personal contact is extremely important. And there's no reason that we shouldn't be doing it. The art of conversation has really gone away in a lot of ways. It took me a while to get a mystery solved in my life, which is, why is it that we hear about these stories of a family driving down the road and the kids are in the back seat texting each other? Why do they do that? Why do they do that? And somebody finally said to me something that unfortunately makes sense, I suppose, which is they don't want their parents to know what they're talking about, which is so unfortunate. And so we're getting away from this whole concept of conversation and trust, because why should it really matter if your parents know if you really trust your parents? Now, the parents have to earn trust too. It goes both ways, but
definitely trust and respect. Oh yeah.
Yeah. But the fact is that we see people, especially younger people, texting because we don't want our parents or other people in the car to know what we're talking about. Well, that's pretty bad.
It is. I agree.
And we've got to, and unfortunately, I'm not sure how it's going to happen, but someday that's going to come back to bite people.
I agree with that one, friend. I agree with that one.
Yeah, it's a real challenge. Well, you went off to college, and then what did you do when you graduated?
After I graduated Washington University, I took a fellowship at one of the largest marketing communications agencies in the world, and I was a diversity, equity, and inclusion fellow, where I worked there for about a year, and I worked under, you name it. I did sector health, I did social media, I did marketing. I worked with larger clients, smaller clients, military clients. And after I left there, I continued on to a smaller agency where I had bigger clients ranging from Aon to Budweiser, the National Restaurant Association. It was amazing being able to work in, I call that the rat race phase I was in. Because it was like, the earlier you're there, the better. The later you leave, the better. Who it was kind of like who could stay the longest, who's eating lunch in the office. So that was my younger phase. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. It gave me a lot of exposure to a lot of different organizations, cultures, languages, media relations, techniques of writing, aspects of politics. I got to work with multiple clients at one time. I also got to help and mentor and mold some amazing young, bright-minded scholars and help them start their career off. But I really ultimately realized I'm meant to serve. So after I left those agencies, I went to work with migrants and refugees during the time when President Trump was locking down the borders. So I had the opportunity to work with refugees and migrants and tell their stories and give a voice to them. I also got to spend some time in South Sudan, where I got to tell the stories of those individuals that the organization was helping and get money for them to fund different programs to help them with the psychosocial work, to assist them with their rehabilitation programs and stuff. And that was amazing. And then after that role, I left and went to work with an organization that works for racial equity and inclusion amongst lower income children to help them have whatever they need to succeed by any means in school and beyond. And now I'm at the organization where I'm at now, with more as a membership organization, bringing together nonprofits, foundations, and charitable organizations for the greater good of the U.S. So I've had a pretty good career along the way, and it has been one that has been up and down, had some challenges in between, but the work I do and am still doing is one that's close to my heart.
So you started out at a big company. Why did you then go to a smaller company?
The closeness. I needed more from my team. My fellowship also ended.
Well, there's that too.
Yeah, that part too. But also I knew I didn't want to stay in the big agencies because I wanted to be closer to the on the ground work. And for me, that meant more than being at a higher level in that space. Mm-hmm.
So the whole idea of being closer and being able to accomplish more because you were in a smaller organization where, here we go again, you could communicate with people and really get something done.
Exactly. I got to actually go to those meetings and sit one-on-one with these individuals and be close to them and talk about their work and what do you need me to do? How can I help? put together strategic plans and alliances amongst partnerships and do media relations for them. Develop not only strategic plans, but, execute them. Develop the social media campaigns and the editorial calendars and, excuse me, put together DEI calendars for them and also help them see their work through a DEI lens, which oftentimes is ignored when you're doing storytelling work. You're telling the story of someone else, but you're not allowing that person to use their own voice when they're telling the story, because you're telling their story, which is actually not equitable at all. So I've done a lot of that work too over the past few years.
So as you've been involved in this whole concept of DEI for a long period, what does that mean to you as an African American woman? What does the whole concept of DEI mean to you?
For me, it means space to not only have a seat at the table, but have a voice. And it means for me to have a space, have a voice, and be able to mentor and bring along other individuals who look, sound like me, or who are facing injustices every day. A lot of times I get into the rooms and I get asked the question, hey, who else is coming? And I'm like, oh, it's just me. It's little old me. I've also been asked, oh, how old are you? I've even had the question, is it just you coming, or are you skilled? Do you understand what you're doing? And for me, that gives me a moment of teaching, because not only do I understand, but I'm good at what I do. And I'm even better at educating and mentoring the young individuals who are coming behind me to do this work. I want them to be better. I want them to have that space and time to ensure that people know who they are, they're educated, and they're self-educating. And also beyond inclusion, the word belonging, making sure you have a space where you belong. You get into a room and you have a voice and you're not afraid, a comfortable space where you can be yourself and do your work in order for you to serve society for a better tomorrow. I mean, it sounds cheesy, but for me, that's important to me. When I have a 3-year-old daughter, I have a 3-year-old little girl, her name is Yara. And for me, I need to make space for Yara. Yara needs to be able to walk into a room and not be questioned because she's young, Black, or excellent. I need for people to understand that Yara and my little brother, Rashad, have an understanding of who they are, that they stand on the backs of ancestral giants, and they will and can make a difference in this crazy world we live in.
Well, so here's a question, sure. And not trying to make it too challenging, but nevertheless it is. So you've talked about DEI in terms of race, which is absolutely true. But the problem is that some of us have found that limits to race. So we talk about any number of people who talk about diversity, but we talk about Black people and the fact that they need to be included. But the reality is, one of the observations, and I was thinking about it before we started this interview this morning, one of the things that I find is that people get locked into their particular area of diversity or equity.
So the real question is, when we're dealing with this whole idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion, how do we get people to really recognize there's more to it than just their individual sphere, if you will?
Good question. Thank you for that, Michael. I honestly think it's these open, honest conversations. In some spaces, I am the person to bring the discomfort to the room in a positive manner, of course, but let's have the conversations that it's not about just your aspect of DEI or of inclusion, or where you are, me, particularly like as a Black woman. There's inequities for individuals who are deaf, blind, who have medical conditions. What does that mean for them? I think having those open, honest conversations, and not only the conversations, but bringing solutions to the table with these individuals of how they want to be talked about, how they want to be seen and heard, and work that can be done to address some of the injustices that they face every day, I think can help bridge those gaps that we often face.
Yeah, it's a trick. Because mostly when I ask people to define the whole idea of what do you mean by diversity, they'll talk about race, or they'll talk about sexual orientation, and so on. And disabilities usually get left out. And so diversity has kind of been so defined that it leaves all of that out. And I've said that many times on this podcast before. But the other side of it is that what do you do if you're going to deal with inclusion? You either are or you're not. And if you're truly inclusive, then you can't leave different segments of the population out. But people are so locked into one area of it. How do we get people to really change that mindset? Because, you know, most people who happen to be Black or who have a different sexual orientation just want to focus on that. Well, we are inclusive because we include those people, but you don't include the rest of society. How do we really change that idea?
I think it's of course it's going to take time. It's something that will never happen overnight. But I think it has a conversation between those different communities per se. And then putting forth the efforts for us to put up the work, develop strategic plans, take the time one by one to have these conversations in the groups and within the communities and lift them up. You know, going to conferences, meeting like-minded people, putting forth those change makers and influencers and putting them in front of these different audiences and giving them the tools and keys and also the proper words and terminologies in order for them to help us bridge those gaps for belonging. I think the word we need to use instead of inclusion oftentimes is belonging, because inclusivity is like, yes, everyone's here, we're welcome, but do I belong? So I'm in this space and I'm included, but do I feel as if I belong? Like you said, people use the DEI term and it's like, okay, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm included in the conversation as a Black woman, or included in the conversation as a white man who is blind. But what does that mean for my belonging? What have you done to ensure that when I'm in this space, not only do I have a voice at the table, but you have also done the physical part and made sure that my voice is heard, or made sure that, you know, there's Braille on the books in our meetings and things of that nature. The conversation goes beyond that. And I think a lot of the work needs to be put forth. And I think the people who have the platforms to do it need to be equipped with not only the resources to do so, but also I think teaching our youth the same thing. You know, teaching our youth that it's not just how you look and what you see about someone that may be a disability. You know, sometimes you can't see someone's disability until they may have a speech impediment or something of that nature that impairs them from being accepted or included or feel as if they belong. So having those conversations with teenagers and myself for a 3-year-old, you know, my daughter, I have a lot of those conversations with her as well, too, early, of course, on her own level. But I think that helps as well. And one last thing I think also would be helpful is putting the academic research behind it. Putting data in front of people. Oftentimes numbers speak volumes. They still do. You know, money talks, numbers talk, you know. You oftentimes can't ignore the numbers in front of you and what that means, you know, humanizing those numbers and breaking them down in order for individuals to understand that, listen, it's not just a Black, brown thing. It's not just a racial thing. It's not just your sexual orientation or your gender. There's more individuals out there who feel as if they're left out. Let's figure out how we can better include them and what are the next steps to get them in these conversations so that change can be made.
So you and I talked a little bit in the past as we were getting ready and preparing for doing this podcast about some of the things that are going on when we deal with diversity. You mentioned Ron DeSantis and his idea of banning diversity programs in public schools. Tell me more about that.
It's a disturbing pattern for me that we keep seeing this. It's honestly like the silencing of Black voices and the aggressive attempt to literally wipe out Black history. It puts me in a space where I'm, one, uncomfortable, but two, ready for change. It's like, come on, are we still doing this years later? Because it's also an attack on some of the most vulnerable, marginalized people in history who are still fighting for this. And in that sense, if this attack continues, it then leaves for younger generations to be ignorant and have a lack thereof of knowledge of the country's history of its own. And then it denies them the skills and understanding to break down this information, to make the decisions of how they want to be a part of this change, or if they want to be a part of change, and how to enact change, to change the historical things and continue to make a difference. I think that then just leaves people blind and blindsided in the sense of like, how do we then not understand that history is here? History is real. People are in classrooms and they need to learn about who they are and where they come from in order to have a better understanding of where they want to go. And I pulled a quote that I wanted to share from Miss Janae Nelson. She'd had a New York Times article a couple of weeks ago. She's the president and director of counsel from the Legal Defense Fund. And she quoted and said, students will arrive at institutes of higher learning illy equipped to engage with historical foundations of this country, which include and are enactable from the history of Black Americans. Moreover, it will deny future generations the full story of turmoil and triumph that is in America. And it will also sow racial divides that are enabled through white supremacy, which the FBI has identified as a major domestic security threat to thrive. I think that was such a powerful thing that she said in that article. It just literally leaves people without knowledge as they continue to thrive and try to grow and learn, but they don't understand who the backs of this country were built on.
And again, going back to the question earlier, it goes further because it isn't just Black Americans or different races.
Our LGBTQ plus friends and family. Yes, it's not just color.
But we're dealing with a country where the unemployment rate, for example, among employable persons with disabilities is 65%.
Yes.
And so that quote is great, but it doesn't include discussing disabilities. And the question becomes why and how do we change that? Because quotes like that really cover much more than race, gender, sexual orientation, and so on. But yet it continues to be that the reality is that one of the very largest minorities in this country are left out. That is people with disabilities who make up over 25% of our population.
Yeah.
And so somehow the people who champion specific areas of diversity need to recognize that it goes further. And that's kind of really the issue that I was thinking of.
No, I agree with that completely. I think a lot of that conversation has to come from the forefront of just because Janae did speak a larger into her article, and she mentioned LGBTQ plus individuals and so forth. But I do think a lot of times, like you said, the disability community is left behind. I think maybe having individuals who are at the forefront continue to be an influence and speak out on these topics as well, because it is very important that they not be left out of these conversations or are the solution as a bigger thing. The solutions are, to me, most important outside the conversation. What are the next steps after we had these difficult conversations, and make sure that everyone, the proper stakeholders, are at the table to make a difference and have their voices heard. And again, like I said before, and not change from the beginning to the end. But they have to be present in the rooms. And I feel like oftentimes individuals with disabilities, are often left out of these spaces.
Yeah. So
unfortunately,
another thought that comes up with this. So we've talked about Ron DeSantis. Did you happen to watch President Biden's State of the Union address and then the response from Sarah Huckabee Sanders?
Yeah.
And so what was one of the major things that Sarah Huckabee Sanders talked about? She was very proud of the fact that after becoming governor, she made sure that critical race theory was banned in public schools and so on.
Oh my goodness.
And so again, we see this continuation of not recognizing that there have been some significant challenges and blocks thrown in the way of a lot of us by some of the people who should know better.
They definitely should know better and should do better.
You're absolutely right. But it is one of the things that we do face. Well, in your job, what kinds of discriminations or challenges have you faced, and how do you deal with them from a standpoint of inclusion or diversity and so on?
Sure. A lot of times, I laugh because just thinking about it is sometimes it hurts to remember some of the things that I went through because it's it has put me in a space where now, as a young professional, I can look back and know that those challenges help make me who I am as a professional. But I've been told that I've hit plateaus because I could not bring in additional Black or brown media hits, or that I was in a space where I wasn't sure if I still belonged, because I could not provide them Black insight, or I then became the Black voice or the female voice in the room as well too. But also, in the same sense, I've gotten a lot of discrimination for being young. I got questions about, like I said, I think I mentioned this earlier on, like, how old are you? Should you be here by yourself? Is there someone else coming? That to me is not only disrespectful, but it's negating to who I am and the work that I put forth. But when it comes to those moments, I've learned over the years, and I will admit, at first I was not the calmest, Michael.
Yeah.
It takes time. Now I'm a little older now. I think when people walk into the room and they do ask who else is coming, is it just us? Or I've had people ask me for my resume and ask for my qualifications before, or spit their accolades to me and ask me to, recite mine back to them. And I have combated sometimes in that sense where I'm like, well, I'm a Gates scholar. I have a master's degree. I've studied in South Sudan, things of that nature. But I've learned to calm it down over the years and ask them the same question back, in the sense of, hey, in that place of where you're asking me this of my belonging, let's ensure that you understand that I'm a young professional and I put in the work. And yes, someone else will be joining us for this conversation, but I am the director in this room. And moving forward, I would like to understand that there's a level of respect that's given and we return to you. So I think boundaries are a big thing that I have put forth as I've gotten older, as putting up boundaries, and also having people understand that that's not how you interact with people. That's not how you communicate with individuals. As you walk into a room and the first thing you see is that it's a Black woman, or just a woman in general, and you should be condescending. I think taking the time to educate people, but also addressing them and their biases in the most professional and empathetic manner, because some people just don't know. They should know. They should. Yes, they should. But some people just don't know, Michael, and they have gone along so long in life where people have not addressed them, or just said, like, hey, listen, that was not right. That was not polite. And I prefer not to be addressed like that moving forward. And there's nothing wrong with standing up for yourself in those spaces, or standing up for the next individual in the room. And if you see it happen, address it. Help someone else who may not feel that they have a voice, or that they have been silenced, because I have been that individual who has worked in these spaces and then had my work taken from me, had my credit removed from an assignment or a task or plan or strategy that I put together, and had someone else's name put on it. I think it's taking the time to address it, and oftentimes asking for help. If you do have individuals who can support you in those moments, whether it's, some friends at work who've gone through the same thing, or talking to HR about the policies that are put in place for these types of moments.
Yeah. Tokenism is alive and well in the world, and in people's attitudes, isn't it?
Very much so. Unfortunately, but very much so.
And it's a hard thing to break, and a hard thing to get people to recognize that we're all people, because people don't view us all as people.
They don't.
And they don't. We haven't taught people to truly recognize, understand, and accept difference. Exactly.
And it has to be taught. Hatred is taught, but acceptance of indifference is also taught. Like you asked me about my childhood, that was not an easy time being a girl who had eczema. It sounds like something to some people very minute, but I had eczema, and I had very itchy, very dry skin, and it was very visible on my face, my neck, my hands, my feet. Children are cruel. So when you don't teach your child how to address someone, or how to talk to someone who looks different from them or sounds different from them, that child then continues on as an adult and thinks that those actions are okay. I heard you mention in the previous podcast that a child came up to you and said, "I'm sorry, you can't see." And I would have responded the same way you can. "I'm sorry, you can't see." Teach your children to respect people. to talk to people with love. Everything people should do should be led with love. When you open your mouth to communicate, or you write on a pen or paper, or you're on social media, remember that the things you're saying to people affect them. There's a person behind that screen. There's a person standing in front of you. Respect that individual wholeheartedly and for the entire person that they are. I've leaned on that for a very long time.
And should actually. And the issue with that child, he was being a person, I'm sure he would say, demonstrating pity where it didn't belong, but he certainly wasn't saying it out of hatred. Now, his mother almost immediately pulled him away, which is really the big problem, because having the opportunity to talk to that young man was a good thing as long as it lasted. Yeah.
And I bet that moment was a teaching moment. I'm sure the child, you said, didn't mean it out of harm, but teach your child. Take that moment as a teaching moment. And you, as someone who's kind and loving and willing to teach and has taught many people and spoke about your story, that then puts that child in a space where they could learn not only to understand difference, but maybe accept it. Acceptance is also another thing when you put someone in the space of belonging.
Yeah. And as you said, it is a teaching moment. And part of the problem for those of us, all of us who are different, which really is everyone, but part of the problem for those of us who are viewed as being part of a minority is, and it does get to be hard sometimes, we have the opportunity to be teachers and deal with those teaching moments, but it's a tough thing to be patient enough always to do that too, which is the other side of it.
It's easier said than done. It's very easy to say, oh, go ahead and teach, bring everyone to the table and we'll talk about it. But sometimes those conversations don't want to be had. It may be traumatic. Someone may be reliving something, maybe a PTSD moment. And I think that then leaves space for the grace. It's a word that I've used heavily over the past 3 years. Give people grace. Again, you don't know what someone's going through, but you don't know how what you may say may affect them. And they may not be ready to be an advocate in the form that you are. Give people time. Help them find a different way to make change. It doesn't always have to be through your voice. Maybe you're writing a letter to your representative, or maybe you're taking time to have small conversations, or you're sharing something on social media. When you see something that's a great quote or a testimony from someone or a video that's educational, take that time to do that. But don't expect other people to advocate the same way you do. And give them, again, grace, time, and space to be ready to have those tough conversations.
Sure. For you, who or what kinds of situations have really made you stronger at dealing with this whole idea of diversity, inclusion, and equity and social justice?
I think a lot of the moments that have put me in this space is being a first-generation college student from Pittsburgh. I grew up inner city. I didn't have anyone to, guide me through school. So when I did leave Pittsburgh at 18 and go to Delaware State University, it was pertinent for me to go to an HBCU, to understand that I'm built and bred off the backs of giants. And I wanted to know who I was before I stepped into a world who may not accept who I was or may not warmly welcome me, which may not, will not, it's a reality. So that for me, going to Delaware State helped me learn the importance of loving on myself as a Black woman, and also encouraging the youth and the generations behind me and putting forth that model as a mentor for individuals who are going through it with me or after me. I think it still puts me in a space of understanding when I'm in marketing, how to see things through a DEI lens and be empathetic to people, because I do understand what it means to be from a state or a place in a family where not many of us make it out. So I think that was like my first opening to that. And then it continued on as things heightened, of course, in college when I went to Western University, which is a predominantly white school. I walked to the school and I wasn't accepted automatically by some people. I had different experiences than individuals who were in my cohort. But what that did was that made me want to write about that. That made me want to tell stories about that in a positive fashion and educate people. But then it does sometimes infuriate me when I see the racial injustices that happen in our country. And I have gone to protest after the killing of George Floyd and Trayvon Martin. Those moments have made me proud. It made me cry, but it made me work even harder for change, for belonging, and for, again, like I said, my daughter to not hopefully face as much injustice that I had to.
How many siblings do you have?
Too many.
There you go.
They drive me crazy, Michael. I come from a blended family. Both my fiance and I. So my mom has my brother and I, and on my dad's side, I have 4 sisters.
So have any or all of them gone to college as well?
Yes, my younger sister, who's right under me, has gone to college. Yes, she is an amazing grad from Kent State University, and she's also in the same sorority, Delta Sigma Theta, as me, Sorority Incorporated. So we do a lot of work through Delta as well. We have both gone to Capitol Hill, and we were active on campus, and she was doing the same work as me as communications and marketing, and it made me proud. I couldn't be prouder of her and all of my siblings.
Well, that's cool. Well, yeah. So you now blaze the trail, but others are going to college as well, which is cool.
Most definitely. My future husband, his siblings are impeccable to breaking the mold, breaking the cycle. My little brother on his side is also in college, doing amazing work. And just to see them thrive and push through and, call and ask for help about certain things, even just little things, you don't think college students will ask about, like, hey, I have a question, but can you edit my paper? To me, that's a big moment. I feel good about that I have come so far that not only through education, but experience, I can talk to my siblings and mentees about the moments that I face and how they can overcome them. And here's some tips and tricks that may help you in this space, or just be a listening ear. Sometimes you just got to be quiet and listen to people.
And so do they call on Big Sister occasionally for advice or guidance?
Oh, they do. They do. And some of them have lived with me. So it's quite interesting to help mold them into these young adults and then see them like go into these spaces or call for like, hey, how long should I eat this tomato? It's been in the refrigerator. Can I still eat it? Like those little things. But also advice on just how to navigate the office space, or how to go to college and how do I organize my time? It feels good. I love that feeling. It's a proud big sister moment for me all the time.
That is great. Well, what kind of advice would you give to other people, young people, but people in general who are facing social injustice or challenges? What would you suggest to them?
My suggestion would be to honestly lead with love. When you face these moments, try your hardest not to give people back the same ignorance or disrespect that they give you. And I know it's so hard. It's so hard. But I think if we put ourselves in these moments where we are ready to make a difference, sometimes leading it with a little bit of force is good, but sometimes taking a moment to step back and realize who you want to be in this moment and how you can change that moment moving forward, I think makes a big difference in how we then move forward as a country and as a people, as a culture. I think that moment where you have those moments in front of you where you're confronted with it, breathe first. Breathe. And think about the next action and how it can affect not only you, but others around you, and how you can take that moment again and be a change that you want to see. I know it sounds cliche, but take that moment. And if you have the opportunity to have moments like this and have conversations with individuals like you, Michael, who have different experiences, do it. Have those conversations. Go and make change. Go talk to your representatives. Go to Capitol Hill and protest. Be a part of your HOA in your community. Just little things like that people think don't have an impact, but they do.
No. And be patient.
Always be patient and give grace. Give grace. Sometimes you give a hug.
Yeah. Even to somebody you don't like, there's nothing wrong with doing that. If you don't start to show the friendship, then they're never going to get the message.
Exactly. Who will? Who will? I know my friends laugh at me sometimes. They're like, you're always trying to help somebody. We can't help everybody. But sometimes you can help one person. If you can help one person, I think it makes a difference. And for me, I have the opportunity to serve through communications and marketing every day and do the best through the nonprofit sector to help as many people as I can come together to make that change. And for me, that's important. It's very important that the messages that we put out into this world, the messages that people see and read and receive, are ones that can change, ones that can educate, ones that can be, sometimes give a laugh, in these tough moments, but also highlight the difference and also give people a chance to have a voice and a seat at the table. That is literally important to me in everything I do, and especially my work as a marketing and communications professional.
You mentioned earlier that you write some things. Have you published anything?
I have. I was a little younger. Haven't published anything most recently, but I did have the opportunity to publish an article with the Public Relations Society about the importance of mentoring millennial minority youth. I also have published research from when I got my master's degree. I've also had the opportunity to do some speaking like you, Michael. I'm trying to get on your level. I went back to WVU last year and gave a presentation on, the balance between racial inequity and trust, what that means. I also spoke to some young students and got to help them understand what that means as well when you're doing marketing and communications. I'm including, again, seeing through storytelling through a DEI lens. So I'll continue to do some more published research, hopefully, and also some more speaking engagements, because I feel like I have a story to tell. And also I want to help other people tell their story.
Well, if people want to reach out and maybe contact you, explore your firm, or learn from you, how do they do that?
Sure. I am on Twitter at hey_Rashidah PR. I'm on LinkedIn as Rashidah McCoy. I also have my own marketing communications agency called Maven Marketing LLC. You can find us online at Maven Marketing 4.
Why don't you spell that? Maven.
Oh, sure. No problem. MAVEN Marketing, MARKETING 4 YOU @gmail.com. And also .com is the website. So yes, we are here to help. We are a woman-led and owned organization. And we see, of course, like I said, through a DEI lens, but we are with you every step of the way as you decide to, build your communications plan, build your editorial calendars, as you plan events. And we also do a lot of pairing and partnering of the clients that I have and move forward with to do work in the community with individuals who or have different disabilities and who are Black, brown individuals from the LGBTQ plus community. So we're looking to do more connection and partnership to, again, make change and enact different voices to be heard.
And by the way, Rashidah is spelled
RASHIDAH, last name McCoy, MCCOY.
There you go.
To be Billups.
Yeah.
To be Billups, Michael. Yes.
But it's the way to get the word out.
It is. It's definitely get the word out, and I appreciate it. I appreciate you helping to spread the word and spread the joy.
Well, I appreciate you being here and spreading the joy and helping to spread the love. And I hope that you, as you're listening out there, will follow what Rashidah says and help spread the joy and the love as well. We'd love to hear from you, and I'm sure Rashidah would as well. So please reach out. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please email me at michaelhi, @accessibe, ACCESSIBE.com, or go to www.michaelhingson.com/podcast. And wherever you're listening today, please give us a 5-star rating. We love your reviews. We love your thoughts. We love your comments. And we really appreciate you adding value to this podcast. And Rashidah, for you and for anyone out there listening, If you have any thoughts of other people we ought to have as podcast guests here on Unstoppable Mindset, please let us know. Email me, reach out. We'd love to explore all your friends and guests, and we will do our best to bring them on and continue these kinds of dialogues. So Rashidah, one last time, thank you again for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Michael. It was a pleasure.